You are listening to the Horse Radio Network, part of the Equine Network family.
This is episode 716 of the Dressage Radio Show, official podcast of the United States Dressage Federation on the Horse Radio Network, brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. On this week's USDF episode, we've got an expert in bridle fitting, Kelly Jones. And then Jodi Kelly is back to give advice about planning to ride in your first international competition. And then Reese and I will bring you a wonderful tip.
This is Reese Stanfield from Georgetown, Kentucky.
And this is Philip Parks from Rockwood, Ontario, and you're listening to the Dressage Radio Show.
Hi, Phil. How are you?
I'm doing great, actually. We're full into summer now, so that's bare minimum is 30 degrees Celsius, which is good.
Yeah, it's
I don't know
much
what
warmer.
I was going to say what that is in Fahrenheit, but I don't even know. I think it's
I have
90
to Google it.
something.
No, that's too much. Yeah.
I love it. I love it.
Yeah. Then you're not Grumpy Phil, because everybody knows Grumpy Phil.
When the summer's over, that's the guy who comes.
We don't like that guy.
Yeah, he's horrible.
He gets so grumpy. Yeah, so that's actually, you're not wrong. It's 86 degrees Fahrenheit. I mean, that's solid work.
It's
there.
getting there. Yeah, it's getting there. Anyways,
that is getting there.
That's about as warm as we get for any kind of length of time.
You're sweating. It is going to be in the 90s here. And we had a very cool May. So we've all kind of like cooled off. And now I'm like, whoa, to the last 2 days, it was pretty hot. I was like, I think also like right around the same temperature. And we were all like, we're sweating. Like we're hot now. So yeah. Yeah. But it's also same. Like it's full summer. It's beautiful here. We're playing in the summer show season. Like there's lots of fun stuff going on. So I love it.
I mean, we've got our first, as far as like the barn goes and that kind of thing, we've got our first show in about 2 weeks.
Ooh.
Can't say we're ready, but
you have 2 weeks. Like that's a while. That's a while.
I feel good about it,
right. You got to get out there.
Always kind of panicking, but there's so few shows that we have to do this first one, and then we'll go from there, right? Which is, it's not. Yeah. I'm not expecting perfection. Maybe by the last show, we're going to be towards something better, but we're just going to get out there and gauge where we're at, and make a plan for every horse and rider.
And I think that's okay. I mean, we talked about it. I had to do that with one of my horses. I was like, all right, I'm going to do this just because I don't know if we're ready, but it was a very, very small local show. It's a great show. And it was right when we got back from Florida. And I was like, all right, let's just see. And he was awesome. So I was like, okay. So I had some confidence. We did third one. He had a really good score. And I was pretty conservative. He was good. I wrote it. I was happy with the score. Like it was all good. And then there's the same little local show is happening. So we're going to go back at the end of the month. And I'm like, all right, dude, like, I feel like we can do this now. So felt pretty solid about it for sure. So.
Yeah. I mean, you can pick on a few things that you want to improve, and then you go out and you improve them. And then it's just a process, right?
Right. Exactly.
I'm going to be showing the horse that I rode in the clinic. I'm like, I didn't fix this, I didn't fix that, and blah, 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 and yeah.
And I have a feeling you're going to go out and crush it. And by the way, sir, can we give a shout out to Philip Parks? I'm so proud of you because this week you were awarded the Equestrian Canada Dressage National Recognition and Achievement Program's 2022 Leading Fourth Level Rider. Philip Parks.
Yeah, I was pretty proud about that.
I'm pretty proud about that too. Shout out to Phil.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Proud of you.
I didn't know like that was a real surprise. I had just submitted the scores to get my fourth level medal. Yeah. Because I over the pandemic, I was showing fourth level a lot, so I just threw the scores in there, and then I guess I was 2021. I wrote a bunch. I think I was the leading fourth level rider in 2021 as well, but they had suspended the program over the 2 years of pandemic.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's fair, right? And
fair. But yes, fair.
Yeah. And then 2022, Canada's leading fourth level rider.
Congratulations. That's fantastic. That is amazing.
Great.
Proud of you. Yay. Yeah. I love that. Well, and again, we have a show of shout outs. We just love them and keep them coming now that there's show season going on or not. It's okay. We, sometimes, obviously you get recognition from going to competitions, but when I have riders that say they don't show, I tell them not a problem. Like there's a lot of respect, in my opinion, if your goal is to ride well. So I try to do that every day and respect anybody who says, I don't really show, but I want to ride well. So we give recognition to great riding and competition, but there's also a lot of recognition to riding well. So, but Phil, congratulations, my friend. I'm very proud of you. And we have a great show today, don't we?
Yeah. I mean, right after this commercial break, we're going to be talking bridles with Kelly Jones.
This Nutrition Minute is brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products, the company that simplifies your search for research-proven nutritional supplements at kppusa.com.
Did you know that easy keepers and horses on restricted diets are often at risk for vitamin and mineral deficiencies? Most easy keepers are maintained on hay, and some get a few handfuls of grain a day, and most of these horses get little to no green grass. Diets that don't include significant levels of green grass or recommended amounts of fortified concentrates just don't supply enough vitamins and minerals. Many horse folks don't realize that hay alone, even high-quality green hay, is not an adequate source of many vitamins. For example, when grass is cut and dried for hay, the vitamins quickly lose their potency. 70% of the vitamin E found in grass is lost in the first week after it is cut for hay. One way to ensure that your special needs horse is getting all the vitamins and minerals he needs is to add a vitamin and mineral supplement to his diet. A well-balanced supplement will provide the nutrients your horse requires without adding unwanted calories, starches, and sugars. Microphase, made by Kentucky Performance Products, is a vitamin and trace mineral supplement that bridges the gap in your feeding program. With Microphase, your horse receives adequate and balanced vitamin and mineral nutrition without unwanted calories or other ingredients. The minerals in Microphase have been chelated, a process that protects minerals during digestion and increases their absorption in the intestine. Microphase provides vitamins such as vitamin E in a natural form, so your horse receives optimal results from this supplement.
This Nutritional Minute has been brought to you by Kentucky Performance Products. You can find all of their terrific products at kppusa.com.
Founded in 1973, the United States Dressage Federation has become the largest organization to represent a single Olympic equestrian discipline. At nearly 30,000 members strong, USDF is your connection to dressage education, competition, and achievement. Visit USDF.org to learn more about USDF education, competition and award programs, and to shop our online store. Again, that's USDF.org, your online destination for dressage.
Well, tonight I'm very excited to have Kelly Jones of kellyjleather.co.uk on the podcast. Kelly, welcome. Tell us about yourself.
Hi. Yeah, so my full name's Kelly Jones, but my business is Kelly J Leather. All my qualifications are I'm a Society of Master Saddlers, Master Bridle Maker, a Qualified Bridle Fitter, and a Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust Scholar. So it's quite a mouthful, but that's sort of a simple overview.
Well, I love it because Phil and I are very big into certifications and qualifications, and that's why I didn't even try. But tell us a little bit about what that means. I think that's really important as we start to talk about bridle fitting, finding a fitter, et cetera. So tell us about your qualifications and what that means for us.
Well, the Society of Master Saddlers is an incredibly old membership group. You can't just sign up for it. You have to take all your qualifications. So simply to become a master bridle maker, You have to be in the industry for at least 7 years, have all of your City and Guilds qualifications. You will also have to have, at the national saddlery competition every year, you have to get a certain percentage over a certain amount of years. So they're called premiums, so it's over 80%, so just like almost a dressage test. And you also will get peer reviewed as well before you can actually apply to be a master or a master saddler, bridle maker or harness maker. So I'm a master bridle maker, so I totally specialise in bespoke bridles. The qualified bridle fitting is actually a very new addition to the society. It's only been going for 2 years now, and we created it purely because we've seen such a need for bridle fitting. And although the saddle fitting has been around for years and years, the bridle fitting was a bit of the Wild West. There wasn't a real core qualification. So I took the exam on the first year that it was open. So it's now been open 2 years now, and it's open internationally, so anyone can travel over to the UK and take it. When I was doing it, we did have people from the US taking it, which is really exciting because it means that it's an international qualification, but it also means it is the best of the best. There isn't anything higher out there.
It's like a proper job, an apprenticeship, right? You probably learned from someone else, and they've been passed, like that apprenticeship program for the saddles for sure. I know has been going for, I think, hundreds of years.
Yeah, absolutely. Sadly, apprenticeships in the UK, they're very difficult to get hold of now. So I actually self-funded it myself. So I still went to the training, but I had my own business and sold belts and dog collars and simpler things when I first started training before I could really qualify and do sort of my City and Guilds qualifications to work towards the 7 years to become a master. And the Queen Elizabeth Scholarship Trust also helped me with that because it gave me a chance to shadow or work underneath another amazing bridle maker called Izzy Russell of IR Bridles. You probably haven't heard the name, but you would have seen her bridles because Valagro used to compete in them.
That is so cool. But we were talking off air on how much, I really believe in your service. I think it's really important. And I had to fess up that actually I felt terrible. Big Mike, who I talk about on the podcast all the time, I got his bridle fitted when he was 6. He's now 11. And in Florida, I would put his bridle on and I didn't have any complaints really about his bridle. But I promise you, overnight, I swear it's overnight, his head changed or something, and I was like, oh my gosh, dude, I am so sorry. Your bridle is too small and your bits look too small. So I think it's an incredibly important service. So talk to us a little bit about, okay, you're looking like me. I was lucky that there was somebody coming to my area and we do it also in Florida when we're there. But tell us a little bit about like what you do when you first see a horse, etc. I'll let you talk about the process a little bit.
So when I first go to see a client, before I actually go there, I try and get a full background information on the horse and just have to do sort of background checks to double check that, ask the customer, have they had the physio, the dentist and things like that, because sometimes that people do sort of forget, my horse hasn't seen the dentist in 18 months. That could be a problem. But if that's all absolutely fine, I'll go out. And the first thing I see is I actually I don't let the customer know, but if the horse is still in the stable, I actually watch it chewing, because you can actually really learn a lot from when a horse is chewing to see how comfortable it is. Because when a horse chews, they chew left to right and right to left. And if a horse is sticking majoritively to one side, so really only chewing like left to right, it sort of can give you ideas of problems going on in the head area. I also check the symmetry of the horse. So just like when you have your saddle checked, the saddle fitter will tend to step behind the horse, not too close, obviously, and look and check that the shoulders are nice and symmetrical. But I do that exactly the same with the head, just making sure that everything's in line, that the TMJ and the jawbones are in line, because you do have to there are some horses that are quite wonky, and that's not a problem, but you just have to pay attention to that bridle fitting, because it may mean that you may need to have a cheek piece one hole shorter on one side to allow for that. So even before I see the horse ridden, I'm already looking at different aspects of what the horse needs.
And the conformation, of course,
Yeah.
right? Yeah, that's what we're talking about is conformationally. Is it normal, or is there something to account for when, in the bridling of that specific horse? Yeah.
I really look at that. I always think people think they want their horse to be as comfortable as possible, so they get the biggest padded headpiece out there, really wide. And sometimes if you look at the C1 joint, so the first main joint of the vertebrae between the C1 and the ear, sometimes there isn't a lot of space for a really wide headpiece. So what happens, you're trying to fit something in a narrow gap that isn't there. So I call it a ski sloping effect. And what happens is that the headpiece doesn't sit flat, it ski slopes up or down. So I always say to customers, sometimes bigger is not always better for sort of headpieces, and that is just conformationally. And warm bloods, particularly dressage horses, are the main. I sort of sometimes look at them and go, okay, you're going to be a bit of a challenge, and I love a challenge getting around it. But there are so many different aspects to look into bridle fitting. But just even a customer can look, how much space does my horse have between the ear and the first vertebrae, the C1? You can feel it with your hand, and you can get a really good idea. And customers don't realize until you point it out, and they go, how have I missed that?
So maybe we'll just talk a little bit about a little bit of a controversial topic, but let's talk about nosebands and tightness.
Yeah.
Let's get that out of the way right now. So in Canada,
Solid
they're
question.
trying to regulate it. Yeah.
Yeah. So nosebands, there's a lot of scientific research that have been done about nosebands, and I take some with a grain of salt and others not so much. But I really think the key thing is having a freedom of articulation in the horse's jaw, so the horse can freely swallow and chew. I don't mean go around with its mouth wide open and its tongue flopping out, because sometimes that is not a nice photo, like a picture, or is not what you're looking for. But you don't want to completely strap the horse's mouth shut. I listened to your latest podcast on the FEI forum that happened recently, and obviously we are looking at trying to make the whole sport as comfortable as possible for horses. And the FEI rule tightness, personally, it's a little bit lax, because where they do take the tightness is on the cheek on the side, which it's almost impossible to fail that, because it's such a soft area when you do test the noseband tightness. But then I sort of slightly agree that going for 2 fingers in front of on the nose can be almost too far in the wrong direction. I'm very much of a practical bridle fitter. I like to make the horse as comfortable as possible, and I never would put the horse in a position that I'm not happy with it being. But not everyone can go around with a lovely loose noseband all the time, because horses do need a stability. It's just like a seatbelt, but there are so many different options for that, not just a flash, but drop nosebands I really like. Particularly, I have a 4-ring drop noseband, so it's a slightly modern take on a drop noseband that draws the strap away from the eye. I love that, and my dressage riders really like those. And I'm a huge fan of grackle nosebands, which is really interesting. They've become quite popular in the UK in dressage, but I've noticed overseas in America, they're still seen quite as taboo. But interestingly, on the scientific testing, they actually came out almost on top on pressure testing as being the best. So I am trying to educate people more and more, but it is a little bit of an uphill struggle.
Kelly, tell us what I'm like Googling it as we speak. What is a grackle noseband?
Sorry,
that's not normal.
It's a cross noseband. I always forget that. It's cross noseband in America.
Would it call it a figure 8?
Yeah, figure 8 or cross.
So we can't. That's not legal in dressage, I don't think, here in the US. Okay. So but it is an eventing, but I would have to check the rules, everyone. But I'm not sure that's actually legal in the US, unfortunately, in dressage. I have to look it up.
It's legal for British dressage over here, and you're allowed to use it in the FEI young horse tests, but obviously not super high up in FEI. From what I've seen, you may be able to use. I definitely know you're not allowed to use it for FEI and young horse tests in the US, but I'm not sure about the USEF. Yeah, I'm not too sure.
The FEI, yeah. So that's interesting. Maybe it's a more advanced rules in the UK that will possibly be coming this way. Yeah, I mean, who knows?
It's because it wasn't allowed until the scientific research that came out, and it got taken to the British Dressage, and British Dressage reviewed it and went, well, really, actually, we can't see why not. So, yeah, they are. It's sort of depending on.
So, actually, everyone, please check USDF Annex A, but a figure 8 cross noseband, I do think is legal in USDF dressage, but please check. And it's in FEI CDI dressage is also legal, but please.
I 100% know it's not legal in the young horse classes. I do know that because I've discussed it with a client out in the US.
And it's also not permitted in FEI tests. Yeah. So again, check that Annex A because I was able to pull it up pretty quickly. So anyways, we're getting the weeds with that. But tell us,
man. Yeah, maybe we'll all be riding in them next year or something. Yeah, because I think it's all driven from the science. And like how do we take the pressure off the different areas of the horse's body, but also like we want to be kind about our training, and right, so we don't want them hanging, with their mouth open, because that's also not comfortable. So we've got to take the science into account.
And another part that I do think it gets completely overlooked is the TMJ, or the temporomandibular joint, which is the joint almost slightly back from the horse's eye, just below where the brow band sits. People completely overlook that joint on horses' comfort, but there's actually been cases in the UK where a horse has shown hind limb lameness and they've blocked out everywhere on the body, couldn't find it. So they did a bone scan, which is a body heat scan. They put radioactive dye in. I'm not sure if it's called that in the US. And it was actually found that the horse had some damage onto its TMJ joint. So they blocked out the TMJ joint and the horse became sound behind. So it shows how something in the head can absolutely affect the performance and the comfort for the horse, but also amazingly lameness. Yeah. So it's another really key point, and it's something as simple as making sure that your buckles are right above the eye, right sitting onto that joint, because it can't be comfortable for the horse. So for the long term, that must be causing discomfort, and as we know, discomfort can cause sort of muscle wastage and also bony changes, which we know is not a good thing in horses.
So Kelly, this is kind of a big pet peeve of mine because, I don't know much about bridle fitting, but I've certainly tried to listen. And one of the things that I hate is when someone comes to a lesson or whatever, and it's a bridle that's designed to have a flash, but they take the flash off. Can you talk a little bit about that? Because that's for me, like it's kind of a pet peeve because to me, it's that bridle is designed to have a flash on it. Can you talk about that at all?
I sort of think it's horses for courses. Some horses that don't actually need a flash, so you would just have a plain cavesson equivalent of what you would have in a double bridle, but obviously with snaffle bits. It is 100% possible. Like the horses do prefer that, but I agree with you. I'm a bit of a perfectionist. I hate seeing the loop if it's not needed.
Oh. Either cut it or get a different bridle. Like, ooh.
Yeah, exactly. I will. If anyone, I say to customers, if anyone turns up to my workshop and hands me a noseband with a flash loop and they ask me to take it off, it'll take me 2 minutes in my workshop because I obviously do everything by hand. I won't charge them, and then vice versa. If they suddenly want a flash loop added onto it, I won't charge them. I will just add it onto them. Because it's just, it just doesn't look, it looks like you've forgotten it.
You forgot it, or again, to me, it's like, okay, that's what that bridle was designed for, so please put it on. Because I agree with you. Like, I think over time, you really have to play around with it. And when you said you like a drop noseband, I love that because, I think a drop noseband is really an important piece of equipment that sort of, for what I've heard, it sort of got lost in fashion. It became more fashionable to have a crank noseband versus a drop noseband. And sometimes I put that on horses and they love it. I mean, sometimes it doesn't work. You kind of have to play around with the bridle fitting, right? You can't, it's not just one size fits all, literally.
Exactly. And so when I go out to see a customer and they want a ridden assessment, I have a box of everything, and I will bring that and we will play around with everything. And it's usually, I can usually get a rough idea. But horses like to prove me wrong. But I usually put on a noseband and straight away we go, yes, that's it. But drop nosebands, I think, became quite out of fashion because they can be actually really tricky to fit sometimes because they sometimes pinch the bit and sometimes they sit too close to the eye. And that's sort of my thinking around the 4-ring drop noseband, which I didn't design, but it's been around for years. It's just in recent years it became competition legal because another major manufacturer started making it, although they didn't steal the idea. It was sort of open knowledge, but it meant that it became competition legal, which is great. But with my 4-ring, it brings the strap away from the eye, and it's also got 2 padded jaw straps, so it just adds a little bit of extra stability, and horses absolutely love that. I do always like to try horses in it because I've only found one horse that absolutely detests it, and funny enough, it's my own personal horse.
Of course it is. Yeah.
So he was in a grackle for 5 years, but I've now just moved him over to a double bridle and he absolutely adores it. So, and it's completely changed him. So that's great. And I've got him to the level that I can compete in a double bridle now. So it was sort of, I was on the sort of not wanting to quite step up yet, tried the double bridle on, and then my instructor was like, you're not allowed to go back now.
Yeah, okay. now you've done it. Which is good.
And the horse enjoys it, right? Or the horse likes it better than what you were riding him in, and that can be the case. I mean, every single horse is a unique individual, and some really like the double bridle, and some really hate the double bridle. But at least through the rules, we're being given a lot more options, and just rules committees. That's a shout out to Reese, right? Like everything's about, being nice to the horse. So we don't have to conform the horse to our aids or to the equipment. It's more about, being generous and saying, that's fine. As long as you're sticking to the dressage standards, what difference does it make, right?
Yeah, no, well, there's been a lot of talk of trying to allow snaffle bridles to be used in Grand Prix FEI tests, and there's sort of lots of pros and cons about that because obviously every horse is different, and I completely understand it is really tricky for someone who has got a really talented horse but maybe doesn't have the mouth is just too small to take double bridle bits and it's just not comfortable. I can completely understand that, but then I sort of also go on the thought of it is another level riding your horse in a double bridle and showing harmony between horse and rider. And because you don't have like the flash to hold the mouth shut so much, it does sort of expose any weaknesses. So it's sort of, I'm going off tangent, but it's
I feel your tangent, girl. I feel your tangent because I think that's like one of the biggest things is that's historically what's been sort of required, right? And yes, it is important. I mean, I am lucky that both my FEI horses go also in snaffles and they go quite well in them. But I have also had some horses in the past that I couldn't ride them in a snaffle. I could not ride them. And they were successful horses, but they were too strong or whatever, and it was more of a fight than it was a good thing. I've never had a horse that I haven't been able to transition to a double. But again, that's a debate. That's a sit around a fire and we could all really, really debate that with some wine. Yeah. That's a debate for everybody. Yeah.
It's particularly on people that compete in less traditional breeds.
Right.
So if like Arab sometimes, and my boy's 3/4 thoroughbred, but luckily he's actually got quite a lot of space in his mouth. But some thoroughbreds.
Easy, girl. I'm in Kentucky. That's all we have here.
Oh yeah. Well, actually, my boy's great granddad is Secretariat, so he is a US horse.
Yes,
He's bred in the UK, but no, he's got this need for speed running through his veins. Hence why the double bridle helps.
Yeah, it helps, right? Absolutely. And thankfully, I mean, that's also another discussion, right? We're just talking about bridles. We haven't even discussed bits. And I think that's really important to make sure, and they're two different discussions, right? It has to be the bridle that fits, and then you have to transition to bits. And that's a different discussion, right?
Yeah. Although I fit bits, and sometimes that I try and not change too many things at once. It's like when you go to a new instructor and they suddenly take away your stirrups and then say, actually, and do this and hold your hands like this. And it's just too much overload and you can't process it all. It's just, so I try and keep it. I try and go, okay, let's sort the bit out today or the bridle out today rather than all in one, unless everything needs to change, which sometimes it does.
Yeah.
And I see something and go, okay, we're going to put all that aside and we're going to start from the beginning.
Start from scratch. Yeah.
Right.
See what you got. If you look at a bridle and you're like, no, that completely doesn't fit, there's no reason why that should be successful, then of course you can change it, right? So
yeah.
And let me ask you a question, because this is for me, and I fessed up right before we came on the air and how, I hadn't done a fitting on Big Mike since 5 years. I was like cruising along, everything was fine, and then I swear one day I was like, dude, your head changed. So how often do you think a bridle and bit fitting should happen?
Again, it happens from horse to horse, and it's really difficult to say. I would say, especially with young horses, 3, 4, 5-year-olds, at least every year, because their teeth are changing, their head is changing. And stallions, I find they just don't stop. It's quite amazing. They just the muscle grows from everywhere. I probably find with older horses, it depends on the work level, but I'm always an open book with my clients that I never say, even if it's they just send me a quick photo and go, I'm not sure about this. Even if I made them their bridle 6 years ago, I would look at it for free and go, actually, I think you need this adjusting, or actually I'd like to come out to see you. But it is interesting, and it's because there's so many muscles in the horse's head and the neck which can really affect the bridle fit. And as I said, I've gone out to a customer who just said, I'm just not sure about something, and I did a few feelings, and I said, I think there's something going on here. I'm not comfortable. And I said, I'll fit the bridle, but could you get your dentist out? And then 2 weeks later, the client called me back and she went, yeah, we had a fractured tooth, a very new fractured tooth, but you were definitely right thinking that there was something wrong. And I could just tell that the horse's asymmetry just changed a little bit in the TMJ. And it's hard to pinpoint what had changed. But I saw the horse and went, there's something different here. I'm not sure. And because I'm not a dentist, I'm not a vet, I just refer them on to. And yeah, the lady just said, look, there was a fractured tooth and we would not have known about it if you hadn't picked it up.
Yeah, no, I think that's great. And how often do you recommend people to get the dentist out?
Definitely every 6 months on young horses. To be honest, I would say I do my horse every 6 months and he's 11, just because they can catch any minor changes. Like, you don't know when a tooth's going to fracture, or you can even just, if they're slightly unaligned, they can start wearing their teeth down and your dentist can pick it up really quickly. And I also think it's huge communication between your dentist, your physio and your vet, because my physio can pick up something and go, I'm not too sure about this TMJ, it feels a bit tight. And then they'll speak to the dentist and the dentist will go, actually, no, I noticed that his teeth are worn slightly differently. So it is a group effect. And I also I have physios contacting me saying, I've got this client, this is what I'm finding. I've had a client who had a horse with quite severe TMJ problems, and I fitted the bridle and it was all great. And then I just got this unknown number call me, and the physio called me up and he was like, what have you done to this horse? And I thought, oh my God, what have I done? Have I broken it? And then they were like, it's the first time in 6 years I've managed to do a pole and TMJ release on this horse that wasn't sedated. I've never been able to do it before, and the only thing they've changed is moving on to one of your bridles. So it can really change, but it's sort of a group effort between everyone, even your instructor.
Yeah.
It's because we, as an everyday horse owner, you miss things. You miss subtle things if you don't see, because you see.
Oh, we all do. Even if you're a professional rider. I mean, I miss my top horse's bit was too tight. I was like, whoa, I was like, oh my gosh, whoa, dude, sorry. So I felt terrible, so we fixed it and it's good now. And he likes his new bits and it's all in Bridle, and he needed a bigger brow band,
Yeah. That is my key thing of, as I was talking about the TMJ, if your brow band's too small, you'll pull the headpiece onto the ear, but also onto the TMJ. So big brow band. Nothing too flappy, because I hate flapping, especially in front of the judge. I always say to customers, the simplest way of checking a brow band fit is placing your hand flat on your horse's head and starting at the nose and running all the way up to the brow band. And if your hand can pass underneath the brow band without like really tugging the brow band, it can just smoothly pass underneath. It's fine. If you sort of can't, you feel like you're actually having to pull the headpiece forward to get your hand underneath it, it's too tight. And it's such a simple way of testing, and people sort of completely overlook it. And some bridles, like not naming names, like Micklem, I think Micklem is a great bridle, but their brow bands are always too small.
Yeah, no, for sure. Well, thank you so much for all of this. We could keep you on for hours. It's fascinating. I think we all are just kind of really getting into bridle fitting and bit fitting. And I think it's for every horse too. I don't care if you have a fancy horse or not. If you ride that horse, he deserves or she deserves a fitting if you can do it.
It just needs to be seen just the same as saddles. You would never ride a horse without fitting a saddle, and it just needs to be seen in the same light, because it can enhance the performance and the comfort just as much or even more.
Yeah, I love it. Well, Kelly, how can we find more information on you online?
So I'm on everything: Instagram, Facebook, even TikTok. I struggle with that one, but I do try and slug away. And I've also got a website, which is just simply www.kellyj.leather.co.uk. And as of actually today, I have launched my bespoke and measuring members area. So you can sign up onto my members area, and there's really simple guides of how to measure your current bridle, and also you can design your bespoke bridle, which will mean that I will be able to make more bridles for international clients, because currently I only do the UK and pretty much the south of the UK. So I'm wanting to branch out more and go over to the UK and worldwide. I can post anywhere.
That's awesome. Well, thank you for coming on the show. This has been great.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. And I look forward to listening to more of your podcasts.
Absolutely. We'd love to have you back on again too.
Perfect. Thank you.
Train with top hunter, jumper, and eventing professionals anytime, anywhere with Practical Horseman on Demand. Your membership gives you access to hundreds of how-to training videos taught by top-level hunter, jumper, equitation, and eventing pros, exclusive interviews and lectures, slow-motion demonstrations, insider access to private clinics and lessons, and step-by-step tutorials. New content is always being rolled out, so there are always new videos available on the topics important to you. Join now for just $24.99 a month and take your training to the next level with Practical Horseman on Demand.
Well, tonight, I'm really excited for this listener question. We have Jodi Kelly from Jodi Kelly Dressage back on the line, international rider and trainer. She has done many, many CDIs from juniors on up to young, to big tour, young riders. And now she's doing the big tour. And this is a great listener question from Lillian. Lillian, thanks so much for writing in. And she wanted to know, I was wondering if you and Phil could talk about how to prepare for a CDI, what it takes to ride in a CDI, team test, FEI, jog, etc. So Jodi, I wanted to have you join us in this conversation because this is a great question. And a lot of people probably hear us talking about a CDI, but we don't really talk about very often. I don't think we've ever answered this question of, when is it time to go to a CDI? What is a CDI? So I'm going to let you get started, and Phil and I will join in as well.
Okay. Yeah, this is a great question. I'm glad it's not about entering a CDI, which is what I thought the original question was, because they are the most complicated entries ever. And
she was like, nope, not doing it.
But I do know when I'm ready for one.
Yes, you do.
So that question I can't answer. I have done several CDIs up through the years. And for me, the CDIs are the place where you go to show off what you think you can do consistently. Now, we all know that things always go wrong in the ring, but for me, when I feel like I'm ready for a CDI, I've already done it multiple times on the national side. I've tested all the buttons, ridden without a whip. I think that's a big kicker that not everybody always thinks about. Anybody that's seasoned in the CDI ring certainly does, but you cannot use a whip in the ring. So for me, for preparing for one, I'm all out of all the young rider things. So for me, it's the small tour or the big tour. If I have an up-and-coming horse that I plan to do the small tour with, I usually start them in the national side at the Prix St. George. And if they're comfortable with a couple of Prix St. Georges and it goes pretty well, then we move on to the I1. And if we can consistently be pretty happy and, fix the things that go wrong on the national side, then typically what I do is I'll do kind of a mock CDI on the national side also. I will do the Prix St. George the first day. I'll do the I1 the second day. Depending on how the CDI schedule is running, I might even do a day in between if that's how it is. Down here in Wellington, we have, it goes over and over and over again, so we can kind of see what the pattern is and kind of mimic it for the national side. And I do that without a whip. So I kind of set all the standards the same and see how it goes. And then when I feel pretty satisfied, for me personally, I kind of have that 70% mark in my head. If I can consistently hit that 70 mark on the national side, that's when I feel pretty good about making my way over to the CDI. And then the CDI, it's not that you're writing a different test. It's certainly not that you're going to, nothing's different about it. But then at the same time, everything's different about it. You have the difference just in the environment, especially at Global. You literally just are one arena over, but yet the whole world changes. So it's typically the bigger stadium, and then you have more judges. Which if the judge at C thinks everything looks good, then certainly the judge at B or E or M or H will tell you that it doesn't look as good. So I feel like that's why it's so important to be able to iron things out consistently on the national side, because then when you go in with 5 different sets of eyes on you, they will not miss a thing. So that's kind of my rule of thumb, is when it seems like it works on the national side, that's when you're ready for the CDI. It's not a place to be experimenting with a new level or be in that trial and error phase, because enough goes wrong in the show ring, even when you feel like you're pretty consistent, I think.
Yeah, I think you make a really good point in that you shouldn't be working out any kind of problems if you're thinking of entering a CDI. I know that people make it their goal, and but you have to be scoring really well, in the national classes, not just placing really well, if you know what I mean by that. It's just
absolutely
you have to be really scoring and able to get high 60s, low 70s every
consistently.
Yeah.
And that's, I kind of keep that 70% mark in my head. If I can hit that pretty consistently on the national side, that's when I feel like, okay, I can go to the CDI side. And people are always like, why are your scores so much lower? And and I would like to believe that you're not judged necessarily more harshly in a CDI. I feel like the judging should be pretty uniform across the board. It's not always, but I feel like that's the idea. But it's the fact that it's viewed from 5 different angles. I think that's what makes your scores consistently slightly lower in a CDI than in the national side, because you have the difference of 1, maybe 2 judges on a national side, and then you have 5 different angles where they see every detail.
Everything.
If you're straight, they see your profile, they see the straightness, they see it all. Something that looks great from the front might not look so good from the side, and then vice versa.
Yeah. And you have to be ready for that, right? I mean, you have to be ready when you go in there, and here at Global, there's also the VIP tent. So that gets a lot of horses. And I mean, riders, not speaking from a friend, speaking for myself, we had waiters drop trays and the horses sad. And I mean, it's a very different environment as well.
Yeah.
And you do school in there. You can go in there and, but there's the tent's not full. When it's full, it's
the silverware is not clanging, and and it's not to say that once you can consistently do it on the national side, you can just drop it right over onto the CDI side and it'll be the same either. And that's sometimes there are kinks that do need to be worked out in the CDIs. I personally had that happen with my last Grand Prix horse. I was consistently in the low to mid 70s on the national side and without a whip, all good, very confident. He was great. And he consistently went into the stadium. He was like a turtle and would just suck back into his shell. Every time he would just get in that environment. And I could kick him around the Grand Prix, but he didn't take me. And I'd go back to the national side and he'd be like, all right, let's go. And off we go. 74%, 75%. We'd go back to the CDI and he'd like be a little turtle back in his shell. And so it took a lot of, and we schooled in it and we schooled in it and we schooled in it, but there were always other horses, when schooling's open, it's open for everybody. And he would go in there by himself and I would just feel him like his neck would just recoil. And I actually figured out with him, the best approach was that I walked into the stadium, which is never my go-to. Like I'm usually pretty bold in my entrance and like go in big, powerful, like give him the confidence of like, whoa. And I figured it out with him actually from watching Isabel. I watched Isabel at something and it's interesting because she changes the way she comes in. I've seen her come in at the posting trot. I've seen her come in like at a hand gallop. She has kind of entered big stadiums in so many different ways on different horses. And I was watching her, I don't know, it was something. And she walked into the stadium and very, very quietly, like walked around and just like, there was no buildup of power. There was no nothing, but just very delicately. And I thought, okay. And I let this horse walk in and we just tiptoed past the judges and like gave him a second to take it all in. And we took it down center line. But so there is that element of having to work those kinks out. And I never had to do that on the national side where it's a little bit more low key. We could go trotting right in or canter right in and go around nice bold. He was very confident. So that atmosphere definitely does get taken into effect. And sometimes you have to be able to, but because that you have that environmental change, then I feel like the movements need to be more consistent and more steady. That's all the more reason to know that the movements work so that that's not an added element of question marks, No,
it's so true. And we haven't talked about, you will need a passport when you compete. Yep. That's just something to talk about. You have to, and that depends on what federation and this particular listener is Canadian. So, you have to work with, Phil can help you with that. I can't. On the U.S. side, you go through U.S. Equestrian. So it depends on your federation. It depends on how you're doing and what the regulations are for your country on what CDIs you can enter. Sometimes you can't just enter a CDI. It really depends. Now, I think the U.S. is actually cracking down a little bit on that as well. Like you just can't go in there. You have to hit some markers, and they're high 60s, basically. Mm-hmm. Kind of what we're talking about
from the national side, I think, right? You have to do a certain number of things on the national side. Yep. And then I think the stabling, that's something that's very different for somebody doing their first CDI. Once is that typically you have to get to the show at a certain time. There's like a check-in time to the show. You don't get to just kind of wander up whenever you're ready. There's a check-in time. And then once you go through the jog that your horse is in the FEI stabling, which is fenced and secured, and you don't get to come and go like you normally would at a regular show. So there's a lot of different factors that come into play when you do the CDI. Yeah.
Yeah, you have to read a lot. Once you do it,
a lot of rules, and it varies from show to show. But there's a lot of them, and you have to pay attention to. Yep. Because they're all a little tiny bit different.
Yep, and you have to log your horse's temperature now. There's an app you have to have. Where you have to be logging your horse's temperatures as you go through, and you have to log them during the day when you're in. I can't remember. Is it 2 or 3 days prior to check in? And they're gonna check. Like they don't mess around. Like if you don't have that, you don't get to do it. They don't play with that at all because it's too dangerous for them, and with viruses going around. And I was, last 2 years with COVID, that was a challenge. You really had to stay up on what was going on. And then for the jog, you need to practice that as well. Not only does your passport have to be updated, but you have to practice the jog. You don't want to just go in there and have your horse.
Your horse actually has to start when you take off running.
Yeah. I was just going to say that you have to bring a snaffle bridle with you.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's one of the things that people are like, I'll just jog. No, you can't jog them in the double bridle. You have to jog in a snaffle. Yeah.
Yep. And then the flip side of that is that you have to compete in a double in a CDI.
Yeah. Yep.
And so
as of right now, yes.
Element. Yeah, as of now. I know they're working on changing that, but right now you still have to compete in a double.
Yeah. So you have to remember to bring a snaffle. You have to show up on time. Usually you have to log your time when you want to, when your jog spot is. And so you may jog 1 of 10 and it starts at noon or something like that. And you can't play around with, if they say you have to be in by 11, you got to be in by 11. Yeah, not getting in at 11:10. They're not going to they don't play around with that kind of stuff. They're a lot stricter.
And then there's different drug rules too. So there's a lot to look into and a lot to know about, that you're under FEI rules instead of your national governing body. And it's definitely a whole different can of worms. But we make it sound so daunting, and it really is a very, very cool situation. I personally think stabling in a CDI is one of the coolest places to be. Like, it's where you see where all the big riders are there, but they're all just riders with their horses at that point. And I've definitely made some really cool connections at CDIs. I think because typically you're not showing with your whole barn. A lot of people most people go to shows and they show with their little group. And so I think you end up often sticking with your little group or whatever, group that's showing with you. And when you're at a CDI, I think with the secured stabling, since there's fewer people, I don't know, I find that I end up interacting more with whoever's in my aisle and end up connecting with riders. It's kind of a fun little fenced off club to be a part of. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, it's a privilege. And it's a neat atmosphere, I guess.
Yeah. And my horses always love it because they're alone, or there's 2 of them. Most of the time they're alone, and they're
a little bit more the focus. Yeah.
They think they are the king and queen, and they are at that point. And you have to also remember, a lot of times body workers and that type of thing, there are regulations, but I do try to keep the same body workers that they come in, and we schedule them that they get to come in the afternoon if I show in the morning or whatever, so that the horses get a little break. And but it's really quiet back there, and the horses just kind of do their thing, and it's quite nice. So, but all of us would encourage you to do it. It's such a cool experience.
Absolutely. Yes, absolutely. It's a great experience for sure. If you're ready for it, I think that's the biggest thing. I think I think you can make it the experience you want too. If you go in there and you go in over your head, I think it can be a very daunting, oh my gosh, what did I do experience. But if you go in and you've already crossed all your T's and dotted all your I's, and you feel confident that you're ready, and your coach feels confident that you're ready, then it's a very, very special experience.
Yeah. And if you have an opportunity to groom at a CDI, you should do that first. That's a great way. Again, you can't just walk in the stabling. You got to be there for a reason. So if you get to groom for a rider, and you kind of learn all of these rules, it's less daunting when you go back yourself as a rider. Yeah. It's easier.
I agree.
So yeah, well, fantastic. Anything else, Jodi, that we've forgotten? That was an awesome response to Lillian's question. And Lillian, we wish you luck. We want to stay with you on your journey. We want to
let us know when you do your first CDI. Yeah,
we will come cheer you on. We would love it. So, well, Jodi, how can our listeners find you online if they have any more questions?
I'm on Facebook, Jodi Kelly or Jodi Kelly Dressage. And my website is getting a facelift at the moment, but jodikellydressage.com will be up and running shortly.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for your time, Jodi.
Thank you.
Well, Phil, As I was scrolling through Facebook, I saw a great post from Ashley Rand-Torres of Art Dressage. She's been on the show many times, and she's a dear friend of mine. But I wanted you to take time and just read this post for me as the trainer tip, because I think everyone's going to enjoy it.
Okay, well, let me just get this going, and then we can talk about what we think about it afterwards. And because I mean. Ashley, great person, great horse person. She's written this. She's obviously, really intelligent and kind of summed up the whole experience of how to, of being in the middle of the dressage world.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. Behind the scenes of striving for perfection. In the spotlight of competition arenas, riders present polished performances that showcase their hours of practice and tireless efforts. But what you may not see is the countless hours of training, the setbacks, and the quiet battles that shape their journey. Dressage demands an exceptional level of skill, precision, and partnership between horse and rider. Achieving that level of harmony is an ongoing process that requires unwavering commitment. Behind every impeccable ride, there are countless moments of self-doubt, frustration, and even tears. Riders face the pressure of constantly pushing their limits, refining their techniques, and developing a deep bond with their equine partners. The journey towards mastery is paved with setbacks, missteps, and disappointments. It takes unwavering determination and resilience to overcome these hurdles and continue striving for excellence. What makes the dressage industry particularly challenging is the pursuit of perfection. Riders strive for that elusive moment where horse and rider move as one, seemingly effortlessly. But achieving this level of synchronization is an arduous task. Countless hours are spent practicing transitions, perfecting movements, and honing the rider's seat and aids. The process can be mentally and physically demanding, pushing riders to their limits both emotionally and physically. The external image portrayed by successful dressage riders often emphasizes their achievements, leaving little room to discuss the struggles and losses along the way. But it's essential to remember that no rider is exempt from setbacks and failures. Even the most accomplished equestrians face their fair share of challenges. Behind the scenes, they fight battles against self-doubt, setbacks, and moments of vulnerability. By acknowledging the hidden struggles within the dressage industry, we can foster a more compassionate and supportive community. Sharing stories of resilience and perseverance can inspire others to keep going despite the hardships they may encounter. Behind every victory are untold stories of struggle, persistence, and personal growth. So the next time you witness a breathtaking dressage performance, remember that behind that moment lies a journey of dedication and determination. Let us celebrate not only the victories, but also the countless efforts, sacrifices, and unseen battles that shape the world of dressage. Let us support one another, recognizing that even in the pursuit of greatness, we all face challenges along the way.
I just love that and have to thank Ashley Rand-Torres. Ashley's been on our show so many times. She's been my assistant and been part of my life. She's my barn daughter. So when she wrote this, I just really felt like it was something we should share. And I hope everyone enjoys it. And if you need to,
I think before we sign off or anything about like that's what we're trying to encapsulate with our show. I think that puts it into words. How we feel about dressage. It's a struggle for everyone, and the few people that we've had on that have won Olympic gold medals, that it's difficult. It's really, really difficult. And not only do you have to be strong mentally, physically, and show up every day, but there's a lot of luck. Every big name rider we talk to say, can pinpoint certain things that say, I got lucky. I worked hard, which when the opportunities come up, I was able to take advantage of them. It's not that nobody gets to the top without putting in a lot of important work. And so this encapsulates our sentiment that we're trying to get across. Yeah,
and everybody's Olympics is different. Everyone is working towards something and has different challenges, and Sometimes a 63% is literally like winning the Olympics. Because you can move forward and do a freestyle or whatever it may be. And I think we forget that sometimes. And I think we all try to celebrate each other's successes. And I think that's so important because we don't know what everyone's struggles are, and everyone's struggles are different. And it doesn't matter if you have the best horse in the world. Sometimes having the best horse in the world is one of the mentally one of the hardest things you'll ever have to do. So I just love that. I just love the sentiment. I just love, I know her story. I know how hard she's worked on the horse she wrote this about. And it was one of those things. I just felt like it was so well written and we needed to spend a little time on it. So I hope if you need to go back and listen to that again, if you're particularly struggling, or if you particularly just had an amazing ride and things just came together for you, or your barn mate or whoever. I just think it's a really important thing to remember as we go through this. My thing is, I always say we're not curing cancer. We're riding horses in circles, but it's very important to us. They're very important circles to us. And we all work very, very hard and just keep celebrating. I think Phil and I, we talk about
build
this
your
all the
community,
time. Yep. And
if at a horse show, you see somebody having a bad day or whatever, I mean, a compliment costs nothing to give.
That's right.
Right. And you can possibly make someone's day or just make them feel better, whatever it is. Right. Sometimes
horse shows are horrible. Sometimes they're clinics or some, you start off with a flat tire and it gets worse from there. I think that's so important to remember. I think we all get a little caught up, but at the end of the day, we're building an amazing community. And I think that's really important to remember. And even if there may be a person that doesn't have a community, maybe they need somebody, or maybe they need somebody just to give them a high five. And I'm going to take this moment to shout out to Dr. Catherine Donworth. She's a huge listener to the show. She's a dear friend of mine as well, who got her 63% at third level test 1, meaning she can do her second level freestyle. And she also got her bronze medal this weekend. So Catherine, cheers to you, my friend. I'm so proud of you. I'm happy to be part of her journey and very proud.
Congrats from the community. Yeah, that's
absolutely
fantastic.
It's huge. So don't forget to send them to us. We love it when you guys send email and Facebook shout outs. We want this community to be that place of cheering everybody on, because this is a hard thing to do. And as you guys are driving to the barn or driving to work so that you can go to the barn later, we just want to acknowledge that. So cheers to everybody. It's cocktail time where Phil and I are recording. So cheers to everybody. And we wish you the best of luck. Well, Phil, I just want to remind everybody we have a book club book going. We will wrap this one up this month for sure. And it is by Eric Smiley, The Sport Horse Problem Solver: What Works, What Doesn't, and How to Make It Better. So we hope you get this book from Trafalgar Square, horseandriderbooks.com. This is a great book. I'm reading it right now. I'm really enjoying it. I've dog-eared it like crazy, so you'll really enjoy it. And as always, the United States Dressage Federation is your connection to dressage education, competition, and achievement. Visit USDF.org for more information. That's www.usdf.org, the online destination for dressage. You can find our show notes and links to today's guests on our page at horseradionetwork.com. Search Dressage Radio Show. Like us on Facebook, just search Dressage Radio Show. Follow us on Twitter at Horse Radio. My website is maplecrestfarmky.com, and my email is reese@horseradionetwork.com.
I think the best way to find me is probably through Facebook, or my email is philip@horseradionetwork.com. I'd like to thank our sponsors for allowing us to put on a good show. That's Kentucky Performance Products. If you'd like to support our show and the Horse Radio Network, you can do that through the auditor program found at horseradionetwork.com.
Everybody, keep your heels down and your shoulders back, and we will talk to you next week.